Hey everyone, Chris Mack presents here with G.I. Joe issue 7. And I gotta say, I had an absolute blast reading this comic book. Not just because you get an advertisement for the GoBots, but because you actually get to see, even though Cobra Commander is the villain, as is Cobra in and of itself, you can see how smart the gentleman is as he's able to pit the Russians against the Americans. And remember, the print date on this is January 1983. Now, before we dive into this, let's talk about who created this book. This is the script by Larry Hama, plot and pencils by Herb Trimpe, inks Chic Stone or Chick Stone, I'm not sure. Letters Jim Novak, colors Christine Schill, editor Danny O'Neill, and editor-in-chief Jim Schuster. So an all-star cast. And from what I understand, the last issue, G.I. Joe has come to Afghanistan to get this Russian tank. Now, remember, this is during the Cold War, so this was a very heated thing. And Cobra Commander has been able to get both teams, captured. And every time I read this, you can't help. I cannot remember the voice actor's name, but he did Cobra Commander and Starscream. If y'all can remember his name, let me know down in the comments. But you just hear that voice as you're going through this book. He goes, the solution was simple. I set you against one another and plucked the prize from under your collective noses. I knew you were too evenly matched for either side to score an easy victory. You see, I've studied your dossiers quite thoroughly. So you see, my dear worthy opponents, I was confronted with a dilemma. I wanted the aircraft to further the aims of Cobra, but how was I to extract it from hostile territory while harangued by two of the best combat teams in the world? So Cobra just used the, hatred of these two nations against one another to get what he needs. But of course, the Joes are, ingenious in how they're able to escape the clutches of Cobra. I don't want to go too far into it. I want you guys to read this comic. The action's spot on. And I love how back in the day, because of the comic book code, they couldn't really show lots of violence. So whenever you see things get mowed down, I like that bright reds that they use. It just adds to the intense. Now, an uneasy alliance has to be made between the Reds and the Americans, but Scarlet is just not having it. This guy, Breaker, I believe is this guy's name. Scarlet says, let's not get cute, Stalker. We've got orders. If we lose the cargo, we're supposed to break radio contact and tell Hawk to get ourselves lifted out. I'm back in Scarlet. This is a no-win situation. I say let's throw in our losing hand and quit the game before we bust. And this is Stalker, the team leader. This ain't no democracy. I'm in charge here, and I'm exercising my prerogative to make a field command decision to examine the options. And so Larry Hama, from what I understand, was a Vietnam vet. So when you read this, he uses a lot of his experience in the book, and it just makes it feel more authentic. And what I love more is when I was watching the Toys Who Made Us, Larry Hama was talking about when he was signed on for G.I. Joe and Bob Budiansky was put on for Transformers. He always said that if you were tasked to write a kid's cartoon as a comic book, you were considered a loser. Going back and reading this, I could sort of understand the stigma, because back in the day, kids' cartoons were like Donald Duck, Uncle Scrooge, Casper, Archie, etc. So seeing both of these writers create two of our most beloved franchises and just this full-on action that we got from this 80s comic is what makes it all the more special as you read this series. The way that they have to all work against Cobra, and you can see even though Cobra Commander is a smart individual, he still lets his hubris get in the way of his ultimate goals. And just overall, I love seeing the resourcefulness of the Joes, how they're able to survive just about any situation under heavy enemy fire. Even when they're set up in a trap, they are still able to get the job done. Now, there's one individual scene, I don't want to give away too much, but as the Joes are making a run for it, Cobra Commander again uses his intelligence to try to outsmart both the Russians and the Americans, but they're able to get away. And one of the Russians goes to ask to, flee with the Americans, and Stalker just smacks her right in the face and says, shove off, sister. This bus is full. Besides, you're our rear guard diversion. So you can see that when push comes to shoves, the Joes are just not taking any slack. Now, as the book ends, you kind of start to question Hawk's prerogative for sending the Joes into enemy territory. It's a great read, beautiful artwork, highly recommended. So if you guys have enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever it is they teach your action figures and comics, and pick up this series. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you mind hitting that fancy little Yo-Joe bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel. We love talking with you and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below, or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave links down in the description. So with all that said, hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.